glad to have you all here. Hi, my name is Mike Proctor, and I'm GMA's second vice president, mayor of Johns Creek, moderator for the forum today, and inaugural chair of GMA's Congressional Action Team. To learn more about our Congressional Action Team, please join me in watching a short video.
People are at the heart of government. Legislation doesn't just change laws, it changes lives. And laws are not manufactured. They are created by people, for people. Because of this, GMA puts people at the center of its federal legislative advocacy. The Congressional Action Team, a highly committed group of city leaders led by GMA's second vice president Mike Bodker, mayor of Johns Creek, is dedicated to connecting Main Street to Washington, D.C. Through the CAT, GMA has developed a strong statewide communication network, allowing city officials to deliver a uniform message to federal leaders, both through district offices and by working directly with the policy staff in Washington, D.C. about how federal issues impact residents back home. By arming Georgia's congressional delegation members with up-to-date information and local examples, they can be better prepared to take action on the issues that matter to cities. Members of GMA's Congressional Action Team are building strong relationships with Georgia's 14 congressmen and 2 senators through visits to Washington, D.C. and scheduled meetings in each congressional district. They are establishing a foundation of trust, partnership, and friendship. When municipal issues arise, Georgia's congressional delegation and staff know they will hear from Georgia's city leaders. They also know who to call on when they need information regarding Georgia's cities. Members of the Congressional Action Team also serve a vital role in connecting other city leaders to Washington. They promote awareness of federal issues, including working with the local media and communicating with other city officials. They help GMA put out calls to action when needed, and they participate in national conferences focusing on federal issues. Thanks to the Congressional Action Team, the people in Georgia cities are connecting with the people who represent them in the halls of Congress.
To further engage our congressional delegation, GMA has developed some new web tools. Through the CAT web portal, city officials can enter their name and address, and a GMA message is ready to go. You can tailor this email yourself as you wish, but when you hit send, be confident that it is reaching the correct person in D.C. This is a great way for city officials to get involved without having to take a great deal of time to search for email addresses or type a lengthy message on a complicated issue. These new web tools will help us further build our relationships with our congressional delegation. And it's in that spirit today is everyone's opportunity to get to know the candidates of Georgia's next Senate seat better and find out where they stand on issues of interest not only to our city leaders, but to the larger public as well. We're going to try to cover as many issues as we can. Of course, if the answers stay short, we'll get more in. When we begin the U.S. Republican debate in a few minutes, and we're going to go until about 10:15 a.m., while we had originally planned to have also a U.S. Democratic debate of the 2 candidates, only Dr. Branko Radavolki, sorry, I apologize in advance, was able to attend. Therefore, he will be given an opportunity to make some brief remarks after the Republican Forum. Next, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists who will moderate our forum today. Tom Crawford has been involved in reporting on Georgia politics for more than 30 years, covering his first General Assembly session in 1974, when the governor was Jimmy Carter and the lieutenant governor was Lester Maddox. He was a newspaper reporter and editor for 11 years with the Atlanta Journal, the Montgomery Advisor, and the Marietta Daily Journal, writing about government and politics at state and local levels. He stayed involved in the political scene after leaving the newspaper journalism, working as a speechwriter and public relations advisor in the late 80s and 90s. He returned to political reporting in 2000 as editor of an online news service, The Georgia Report, where he covers the General Assembly in all aspects of Georgia politics. Tim Bryant began his radio career in Bainbridge, Georgia, after completing a stint at the National Journalism Center in Washington, D.C. Subsequent stops on the dial included Augusta, Tallahassee, and Atlanta. Tim has also worked as a correspondent for ABC and the Associated Press and provided commentary for the BBC and Radio New Zealand. Lori Geary joined the reporting team at WSB in January of 1998. While anchoring at CNN Headline News, she majored in broadcast journalism at Syracuse University's Newhouse School of Communications and started a reporting job at WRDW-TV in Augusta. Since then, Lori has traveled to Dubai and Cuba, covering Governor Sonny Perdue's efforts to bring more jobs to Georgia, and China to cover Governor Nathan Deal's economic development trip. She's the recipient of a Common Cause Democracy Award for her coverage of the Georgia State Capitol and was recently named one of the best state political reporters by the Washington Post. Thank you all for participating in today's forums. Next, I'd like to introduce the candidates, and I'd like to go over some ground rules. Each candidate will be given 1 minute to make an opening statement. The order of the opening statements will be determined by drawing names from a hat that's actually already been determined. Following the opening statements, panelists will take turns asking questions of the candidates. Responses to the questions should be limited to 1 minute. At my discretion, other candidates may be given up to 30 seconds for rebuttal. At the conclusion of the debate, each candidate will be given 1 minute to make a closing statement. Denise Jordan, City Clerk for Gainesville, will be serving as timekeeper. She'll hold up a yellow card when you have 20 seconds left and a red card when you're out of time. And finally, please remember to keep all discourse polite and civil. I know that won't be a problem. Today we have 6 of the Republican candidates will be joining us for our debate. I would ask that you please hold your applause until I've introduced all the candidates. Briefly, Representative Paul Brown. Paul Brown graduated from the University of Georgia and Medical College of Georgia. At age 18, he volunteered as a U.S. Marine, and today he's a member of the U.S. Navy Reserves. Deployed to Afghanistan in 2012 to treat sick and injured Marines and soldiers. He has represented the people of the 10th Congressional District since 2007. Next, we have Representative Phil Gingrey. Phil Gingrey was born and raised in Augusta and attended Georgia Tech and the Medical College of Georgia. A physician, he practiced his OBGYN in Marietta for almost 30 years. He has represented the 11th District since 2002 and serves on the House Energy and Commerce Committee, the House Administration Committee, and the Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe. Next, we have Karen Handel. Karen has spent over 20 years in the business world at KPMG, CibaVision, and CEO of the North Fulton Chamber of Commerce. Her political career includes serving as the Fulton County Commission Chair and as Georgia's first Republican Secretary of State. She ran for governor in 2009 and lost in the primary runoff to Nathan Deal by less than 2,500 votes. Next, we have Representative Jack Kingston. A graduate of the University of Georgia, Jack Kingston has represented the 1st Congressional District since 1993. Prior to his service in Congress, he was a member of the Georgia General Assembly, where he served on the State Planning and Community Affairs Committee. When not in Washington, he lives in Savannah, Georgia. Next, we have David Perdue. David was born in Macon, Georgia, and raised in Warner Robins. He's an experienced business leader who helped grow some of America's most recognizable companies, including Sara Lee, Haggard, Reebok, and Dollar General. As a Fortune 500 CEO, David oversaw the expansion of Dollar General, adding 2,600 stores nationwide and creating thousands of jobs. And last but not least, we have Eugene Yu. Eugene Yu's family emigrated from South Korea to Augusta over 40 years ago, and Augusta has been home ever since. Eugene attended Augusta College and served as Richmond County firefighter, sheriff's deputy, and in the U.S. Army as a military policeman. An entrepreneur, Eugene founded Continental Military Services, Inc., which supplies military-grade armaments to our allies in the continuing fight against global terrorism. Please join me in welcoming all of our candidates. Now we'll begin with some 1-minute opening statements. The order having been previously determined by drawing names from the hat. Our first opening comment will come from Representative Brown.
federal government is totally out of control. It's spending too much, it's taxing too much, it's regulating too much, it's borrowing too much, it's sticking its ugly nose in all of our business too much. Both parties are guilty, and that must stop. And that's what I've been fighting ever since I've been in Congress, this out-of-control government. If we were running our government as our founding fathers meant for it to be, members of Congress would be just citizen legislators. I'd be practicing medicine here in Georgia, going to Washington periodically to make sure we have a strong national defense, make sure that we are secure, have a secure border, have sound money, our foreign affairs in the best interest of our nation, and voting on only the 18 enumerated powers in Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution. And you wouldn't have all the unfunded mandates that you have to deal with. I'm trying to stop those. We've got to go back to the Constitution as the founding fathers meant for it to be. Thank y'all so much.
Next, we'll hear from Representative Jack Kingston. Whatever you'd like.
Thank you very much. I'm Jack Kingston. I believe that the American dream is under attack. I believe that a large, intrusive government with runaway spending is taking away our liberties and our freedoms. I fear that my children and your children will not be able to grow up in the America that you and I know and you and I love. You know in your own cities, in your own communities, that your ability to govern is greatly hampered by unfunded mandates, EPA overreaches, federal government lawsuits, tying your hands, your council hands, and tying up much of your budget. We have to push back on the overreaching federal government because the smallest government, the closest to the constituent government, has always been the most effective unit. We have to stand up for small towns and large towns and cities all over America and recapture the American dream. Thank you.
Good morning. This year the election is all about you. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Eugene Yu. I am living the American dream. As a young boy came to America. Today I'm running for U.S. Senate. This is what I call pure American dream. I am true. This dream is real. We live in a great nation, a nation that I believe in. I used to be a factory worker. I used to be a fireman, U.S. Army, as well as a deputy sheriff in Richmond County. And I was doing for the last 24 years doing business, exporting all the military vehicles that are overseas. However, Washington needs new blood. Washington needs new common sense. Washington is completely out of control. I am that person. I am not afraid to say what needs to be said. I need you. I need your vote. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Representative Phil Gingrey.
Good morning. I'm Congressman Phil Gingrey, Dr. Phil Gingrey. And thank the members of the GMA, council members, mayor, and staff for being with us. I know you've had a 72-hour long weekend. I've spent 32 years as a physician, so I am not a career politician. Politics, public service, public servant is my avocation, and I've worked with many of you at the local, state, and national level. This is my 12th year in the Congress. I look forward to going to the Senate and being your next United States Senator, because quite honestly, the job is not complete. And as I as a physician, who would know better how bad Obamacare really is for patients, for providers, for hospitals, and for job creators. Absolutely, it's linked at the hip with the economy. It's killing the economy. I'm going to the Senate and I'll fight for you. I share your values. I believe in those values. I'll fight for them, and I'm uniquely qualified to serve as your next United States Senator. Thank you all. I look forward to your questions.
Next, we'll hear from David Perdue.
Good morning. My message in this race has been very simple. I'm not a politician. I've spent the last 41 years of my life working in the free enterprise system inside the United States, outside the United States, working my way up to run some of the largest companies in this country, companies like Reebok brand, Dollar General. We have a full-blown financial crisis on our hands today. That's why I'm in here. I believe our career politicians have caused it, and we can't trust them to fix it. $17 trillion we all talk about, we read about it in the press. What we're not talking about is another $86 trillion of estimated future liabilities of our federal government in Social Security, Medicare, and pension and benefits of our federal employees. How did we get in this mess? Well, when you realize that only 10 people in the United States Senate have any business experience, and the people in this race, 4 politicians, have been in office for 63 years and run for office 39 times. If we want different results in Washington, it's time we put a different type of person in Washington. Thank you.
Finally, we'll hear from Karen Handel.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you. Most of you know I am a former local elected official myself, having served as chairman of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners. I know the shoes that you walk in and how every single day you have to deliver real results to the people that you serve. And by any measure, the results we're getting from Congress are pretty poor. I'm proud that as Fulton County Commission Chairman, I was an advocate and a champion for the incorporation movement throughout Fulton County. I knew that I had to deliver good, solid results because the decisions that we were taking were going to set the precedent for how cityhood would form across the state. We need to have new leadership in Washington. We need to have individuals who understand that results really do matter. In the past 20 years, we've seen the debt go from $4 trillion to $17 trillion. And what you need most is a United States Senator who understands how you work day in and day out, a United States Senator who will be your partner and making sure that we work together to get this economy going again and preserving the American dream. Thank you. I look forward to answering your questions this morning.
So now we're going to get to the heart of the matter, and I'll ask one favor up front, because I'd really like to stay friends with all of you by the time this is over. The only way I can do that is if you'll just do one thing. Watch the monitor. Because when you get close to time, it's my job to give you the hook if you're running long. And you did a great job on the opening statement, so I'll assume we're going to keep it going. We're going to start with Tom with the first question.
All right, Congressman Brown, question for you, please. As a lot of the mayors who are here today can tell you, one of their biggest expense items in the city budget here is paying for police and public safety. You, I believe, are holding a drawing for an assault rifle, the same kind of assault rifle used in the Newtown shooting incident. Aren't you concerned that having assault rifles more freely available is going to really create more of a burden for cities that have to provide public safety protection for their citizens?
Absolutely not, Tom. In fact, Georgia is a pro-gun state. I'm the chairman of the Second Amendment Task Force in the U.S. House. I've been endorsed by Gun Owners of America and the National Association of Gun Rights. Our founding fathers believed that individuals owning guns were the best way not only to protect ourselves, our property, and our lives, but to protect ourselves from our own federal government. The Second Amendment is all about tyranny. And as a strong advocate for the original intent of the Constitution, what I've been doing in Washington ever since I've been there is fighting to send powers back to the states or the people as the 10th Amendment says it should be. So the mayors and county commissioners and the state officials should have more political power than we have in Washington, D.C. And that's exactly what I'm standing for, what I'll continue to stand for as your U.S. Senator. So when you vote for me, you're voting for somebody who's going to be your advocate to get the unfunded mandates off your back and to turn the power back to the states and the people as the 10th Amendment says it should be. We'll get to Lord.
I've heard a lot of talk from all of you about less government, less taxes, unfunded mandates. Some are career politicians, some are not career politicians, but a lot of you talk the same speak. So I want to know, and I would like this addressed by all of the candidates, besides all of these differences, appearance. How are you different? Where do you differ on the policies? Why should somebody vote for a Paul Brown rather than a Phil Gingrey or a Karen Handel? What's really different on the policy? And we'll start with Congressman Gingrey.
Laurie, is a great question, and I don't think there's a lot of difference on policy among the 6 of us sitting here today. But there are subtle differences. There is some daylight among us. And I think a lot of it has to do with personality and ability to work and get along with people, both within our Republican Party and indeed across the aisle, without sacrificing or giving up any principles. And I know you don't want me to do that. As I said in my opening remarks, I share your values and I'll fight for those values. But I can assure you that I can work with anybody, as I have done on the nonpartisan Marietta City School Board and in the Georgia Senate, my teen driving bill that I got passed that saves the lives, hopefully, of many teenagers. Roy Barnes was governor, Tom Murphy was Speaker of the House, Mark Taylor was Lieutenant Governor, and Phil Gingrey was a freshman minority Republican senator, and we got the job done.
The big difference in this race is results. I'm a business person, and I understand that results matter. As Fulton County Commission Chairman, I faced a $100 million budget deficit. I faced it head on. We took cuts. We didn't raise taxes, and I did it without the advantage of a Republican majority. Results matter. Let's look at the results that we've gotten from Congress over the past 10 or 20 years. $4 trillion to $17 trillion in debt, trillions more in unfunded liabilities that we have. We're overtaxed, we're over-regulated. You have unfunded mandates coming to you. And so my question is, who is the individual up here who has a proven record of results? You are looking at her time and time again. I have shown that I have been able to get the job done. When the incorporation movement was coming through Fulton County, the cities and the advocates of the cities depended on me. If I just threw up my hands and voted no, what would have happened? Nothing. So I am about getting results and making sure we get our economy going around, that we address this fiscal crisis in our country, and that is going to take someone who knows how to deliver results.
Everybody gets this?
Yes.
I'd say what's different about me than the panelists out there, for one thing, it should be very important to you. I've represented 125 different cities. I've represented 41 counties. I've worked with so many of you personally and your own issues as you grapple with the unfunded mandates and the EPA regulations that have been thrown down upon you. I'm the only one who has agriculture policy experience. Agriculture in Georgia is $76 billion in economic impact. Very important for rural Georgia, which I have been very involved with. I have a strong business background. I was vice president of a large insurance brokerage firm, and as a member of Congress, I have a 100% lifetime voting record with the National Federation of Independent Businesses. I know what excessive regulation, such as Obamacare, does to the private sector. I've cut my own office budget, $1.3 million, to show that I've not just walked the walk, or talked the talk, but walked the walk. And I've cut spending as a committee chairman, $3.6 billion, negotiating with Dick Durbin and getting President Obama to sign the bill. I have brought results effectively to Washington, but I bring Georgia values there and not vice versa.
Thank you.
You know, Lori, in this race, it's why I got in this race, frankly. We have a full-blown financial crisis on our hands right now. And when you look at the differences in this race, on the policy side, there's not much of a difference. There's not a nickel's worth of difference in the conservative values of the people on this board. The second thing is, recognize this, anybody on this stage will be better than a liberal Democrat in this Senate seat in Georgia. But the real difference is 60% of us in Georgia say that the financial crisis and the economic crisis is the #1 issue in this race. What we have to have is people who can go to Washington and lead. We have gridlock in Washington between tax increases on one side, spending cuts on the other, and nobody's talking about how to get this economy into the equation, into the debate about how to solve this debt crisis. $100 trillion. That's $1 million per household, folks, for you and your children. That's why I'm in this race, Lord. Thank you.
As you see, I'm only one of a kind, the candidate said. Our approach is with common sense. Our societies of today, the most important thing is economy and job. I will bring the job. I think I'm the most qualified person to bring the job that we lost to overseas. That if I can bring those jobs back to the U.S., specifically here in Georgia, I think that is my job. And also, I don't owe nobody in Washington or here. I'm first time in the politics. I will work for you. I will stand up for you. I will represent you that whatever your best interest. I am not a career politician. I will approach, like I said, I will approach this common sense. Thank you.
Representative.
Well, I was just going to say in regard to my colleague, Congressman Brown, and rattling off the AR-15. I don't own an AR-15. I'm not calling that a stunt. That's just something he's decided to do. But I like to say, I have an A+ rating every year from the National Rifle Association, and I think that stands for itself. We're all for the Bill of Rights. There's no question about that. I don't own an AR-15, but I own a Glock 27. I own a 16-gauge Browning shotgun that I can go quail hunting and that sort of thing, but I'm not rattling off anything. And again, Paul's my friend. I'm not accusing him of a stunt, but I don't need to do that to get an A+ rating from the National Rifle Association.
We're going to have a lesson here. If you call someone by name, I'm here. 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mayor. In fact, I have been endorsed by Gun Owners of America, the National Association of Gun Rights. Second Amendment issues is what started my political activism as the Government Affairs Vice President for the world's largest pro-hunting conservation organization. It's called Safari Club International. We must not lose our Second Amendment rights, and I'll do everything I can to make sure that you continue to have your individual right to own a gun. Mayor, I have not had a chance to answer Lori's question either.
Well, we're going to stick to the rebuttal.
No, he didn't wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
I didn't have a chance to answer Lori's question. What separates these candidates? You can divide the candidates into three categories. There's one category of candidates that claim to be conservative, but they have absolutely no record whatsoever to back that up. There's another category of candidates that claim to be conservative, but their record does not back up a consistent conservative record. And there's one candidate, me, who has a consistent conservative, proven constitutional record. Now, I'm not conservative some of the time. I'm not conservative most of the time. I'm conservative all of the time. And that's what separates me from all these other candidates. I have that proven record. I've been fighting to stop this out-of-control government. I've got H.R. 2900, which is my Patient Option Act, which repeals Obamacare and keeps a federal bureaucrat from being between you and your doctor. I've got my jobs bill, which would bring millions of new jobs. In fact, I started the process to bring Caterpillar here to Georgia, and I've been working on economic development. I've got the balanced budget amendment that's the strongest in Washington, so I have that proven record.
Tim.
Question, and this will be directed to David Perdue, although it may be another opportunity for each of the candidates to weigh in as the moderator sees fit. This is an issue that I think will be of interest to the folks in this room. CDBGs, and the G does not stand for guns in this case. Community Development Block Grants, the process by which the cities represented by the people in this room, one of the processes by which the people, the cities receive federal money. Simple question, David Perdue, if the others wish to answer. Is that a process that needs to be revisited, revised, streamlined, changed in any way?
Well, it's a great question as well in terms of economic development and what happens when the federal government tries to get involved in the free enterprise system. Frankly, of course, it needs to be revamped. The bureaucratic compliance requirements of not only that, but education and even business has gotten out of control. This president has created basically a fourth arm of government. He couldn't get cap and trade passed a few years ago, so he turned around and told the regulators to kill coal, which they did in a year. We now have a fourth arm of government. The regulators are out of control. This compliance issue that you're facing and that other people involved with the national federal government face the same thing. My mother and father were teachers. My father was superintendent of House and County Schools, and I remember as a kid, these unfunded mandates is not a new term. I mean, I remember him having to deal with federal compliance requirements to get federal money. And the problem right now is that economic development starts at the local level. Small businesses employ over 80% of the people who work in this country. And yet, if you look at Dodd-Frank, if you look at the other requirements from the regulators right now, we're at Obamacare, we're doing everything we can to kill small businesses.
Mr. Yu, community development block grants.
I believe that our federal government got involved so far too many areas. I think that the federal government, you should give some of those powers back to the people, back to the state. If we continue doing that, no wonder we have so many, the $17 trillion deficit. Today we might call it the 17 trillion. Maybe next year we might call it 20 trillion. Who knows? We must reduce this federal government, give back the state, and give back the power back to the people.
Congressman Kingston.
Now, CBDG has allowed you to maximize local tax dollars and do projects which you might not be able to do. I know how enormously popular it is for Georgia's cities and how you do use it. But would it be on the chopping block, so to speak, with the rest of the budget? And I do think that it would be. But as you know, we've gone through a lot of changes and grants over the years. I think the most important thing is to always have cost-benefit analysis to make sure that they would create jobs, to make sure that they do something for the overall benefit of the community. You know, with COPS grants, when they came out in the early 1990s, they were originally for just police officer hiring, and many of you did not want to do that, so we started the local law enforcement grant. Local law enforcement grant gave you more flexibility, but now it's really the burn jag grant, and your local police departments use that right and left. I think these grants will always be evolving, but always somewhat be on the chopping block in the context of a $17 trillion national debt. We are going to be reforming these things on a regular basis. But that's why you and I need to stay in touch. And you need a senator who understands local municipalities.
Thank you. Certainly I understand how important these block grants are at the local level. I don't think that with the $17 trillion debt that quite frankly has built up over the tenure of some of the congressmen here, that we can afford to have anything be a quote sacred cow. With that said, when we make priorities in the budget, we need to have priorities. And thriving cities is a priority and should be a priority. We're spending dollars overseas funding things like the Bridge to Nowhere or funding economic development in Morocco. I would venture to say that being supportive of our cities here at home is a much higher priority. Secondly, as we look to make the budget cuts, you have my commitment that we're going to do it in partnership, because I understand that we don't want to have something happen where the cuts just pass downhill and nothing really changes in Washington, but you're expected to pick up the tab. That's the wrong way to do budget cutting, and we need to do this as partners in it and making sure that we're getting the economy working again with cutting spending, yes, but doing it prosperity initiatives and cutting taxes, reducing the regulatory burden.
Congressman Gingrich.
Well, indeed, in a $3.7 trillion budget, there are some sacred cows, but some cows seem to be more sacred than others. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. In these appropriation subcommittees, when they get around to spending this discretionary spending, not mandatory spending. And of course, CBDG is part of the THUD appropriation subcommittee. And I know it's very important to the 70 plus cities that I've worked with over these last 11 and a half years, and how important it is to what you do in your communities, and that money is well spent. But as been said, there's no question that we all have to tighten our budgets and look and make sure that we're efficient and that these things are done fairly, that these grants are approved in a fair and open process. So I know how important they are to you. Believe me, as your next United States Senator, I will continue to work very close with you and make sure that this cow is just as sacred as any other.
Congressman Brown.
In view of all people should know that I've helped Athens to work with their community block grant program, as well as the neighborhood health clinic in Athens to get the funding that they desperately need. But we've got to find bridges to leave dollars in the hands of the states or the people, as the 10th Amendment says that they should be. And that's what I'm working on. You see, we have enough money in this country to take care of poor people, and we must. take care of senior citizens that are in need. We must give good quality health care for all Americans. The problem is we built this big bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. that's sucking money out of the cities and the states and away from people. In fact, in my Patient Option Act, I'll give you an example of a bridge that I've put in place. In my Patient Option Act, H.R. 2900, it repeals Obamacare in its totality, but it gives people a tax credit for contributing money to a neighborhood health clinic, like the Athens Neighborhood Health Clinic, or Mercy Health Clinic. We've got to get the money back in the hands of the states and the people. That's what I'm working for.
You all have talked about keeping money in the hands of state and local governments. The Senate passed the Marketplace Fairness Act, which would allow states to collect sales taxes that are already owed on out-of-state internet sales tax. But as three of you know, it's lingering in the House. So, Congressman Gingrich, where do you stand on this issue?
Laura, it's a great question. Obviously, Georgia has done a great job, and I want to commend them for the passage of their bill that, as I understand it, absolutely requires these companies, these internet companies that have a brick and mortar presence in this state will be obligated, and it is their obligation when they make the first sale to somebody in the state of Georgia. They have to collect and submit on an annual basis to our treasurer that sales tax. It's only fair and it's the right thing to do. I don't think it should be really a federal issue. I know the Senate has already passed that. I know our two senators voted in favor of it. Hasn't come to the House yet. Something I'll look at very closely. I'm so much against raising taxes and for promoting entrepreneurship from these small shops, mom and pops that work only on the internet. But we need to look closely at it, no question about it.
Congressman Barron, I just want to get your take on this since it's heading over to the House.
Laurie, we shouldn't be raising taxes on anybody. That federal government's getting too much of our money, and we need to be lowering taxes. In fact, I believe that 10% is good enough for the Lord. It ought to be good enough on Sam. But we have to shrink the size and scope of the government. We have to start creating jobs. Instead of raising taxes, we should be raising taxpayers. In fact, my jobs bill would do just that. It would create millions of new jobs and would spark our economy so that if we'll stop this out-of-control spending that I've been fighting ever since I've been in Washington, the Republicans and Democrats alike have promoted, then we can start paying down this debt. We can help to get this country back on a fiscal course that is sane. And what the federal government's doing today, both parties are guilty of spending money we don't have. Government must live within its means. So we shouldn't be raising taxes, we should be raising taxpayers. Pass my jobs bill, free spending, and we'll be in good shape.
David Perdue, can I ask you this, because you come from a business side. Do you consider internet sales tax raising taxes when the brick and mortar stores have to collect it?
No, I mean, that's one perspective on it, but being the only retailer up here, I can tell you I've seen both sides of this conversation. But one of the things the federal government does, or should do, frankly, is make sure that all players in our free enterprise system play on an equal playing field, an even playing field. And here's one, because of technology, they're not. And quite frankly, I think when you have brick and mortar or internet sales, we should have the same rules apply to both. That's from a retailer. Second to that, though, this is where the federal government gets balled up. When they think they know more than we do about the free enterprise system. How simple is what I just said? We've been debating that for 10 years. We still don't have a resolution on it. It's time that we get the politicians out of the way, get free enterprise moving again, get the regulators off the back of small businesses, and get this money that's tied up because of uncertainty from the federal government back at play in our economy. We have over $6 trillion not at play in our economy right now because of the foolishness in Washington. Not only the administration, but this Congress. Thank you.
Mr. Yu, do you want to weigh in on this internet sales tax issue?
Well, I've been saying all along the common sense. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a land of opportunity. Free enterprise. We should promote the folks, Georgia or anywhere. We should let them do good business And as a government, we should support them to do good business, be prosperous. That's what all America is about. The federal government to reduce all this regulation, the tax. They need to give a freedom to the individual. They can do the business properly for their family, their community, their state. That's all I have to say.
Congressman Kingston, do you want to weigh in on this, the Marketplace Fairness Act? Will you vote for this?
Look, a quick audience participation moment. How many of you feel like you own tax returns? Raise your hand. If you feel like you own taxes, raise your hand. Now, how many of you pay somebody to feel like you own tax return? You know, everywhere I go, it's always the majority has to pay to have somebody figure out what they actually owe Uncle Sam. I am an advocate for comprehensive tax reform. We need to simplify the tax code. It should be a half-inch deep and miles wide. It should be transparent. We should eliminate the loopholes and all the underbrush. If you put market fairness tax, or this internet sales tax, on the table, then you are also going to inch municipal bonds there. Now, I do not favor stopping the tax exemption for municipal bonds, because I know how important that is for you as a tool for economic development. But if you start picking and choosing which taxes you want, that's what's going to happen. When we take the plunge for tax simplification, we have to do it all at once.
Karen Handel.
I appreciate that we want to have fairness across the board for businesses. I will tell you, I have some real concerns that this bill might have some unintended consequences. It's certainly already been dealt with here in Georgia. And small companies, remember the revenue threshold for this is $1 million. Well, for most small businesses, their margins are going to be 5%, maybe 10%. The compliance aspect of this is going to be enormous. Trying to figure out how to deal with tax returns in 50 different states, how to figure out how to deal with upwards of $10,000 taxing jurisdictions. My preference would be to see us go and do truly broad tax reform, rewrite our tax code so that it is fairer and simpler, and let's really look at fairness as the real driving principle in it. You know, we saw with Obamacare, people had really good intentions, but we also saw what the unintended consequences are. So I think approaching this from a broader tax perspective is really the right way to go.
Tom. I'd like to address this question to the three current members of the House. That would be Representative Kingston, Representative Gingrich, and Representative Brown. Last fall, I believe all three of you voted basically to bring about a shutdown of the federal government for 16 days, which had an unfortunate economic impact. We'll be meeting or headed toward a debt ceiling limit vote in a few weeks, maybe at the end of February. Do you plan to vote again to shut down the federal government, or have you made some changes? Start with you, Congressman Kingston.
Tom, let me say one thing, that I have not seen any studies that show that the shutdown actually did harm the economy. I know that there was a narrative about that, but I don't believe that any hard proof has been there. As you know, we've had 17 shutdowns of the government since the 1970s, and because of those shutdowns, there was always some summit that came together where spending was in fact reformed. We tried to correct the path of spending one way or the other. This particular shutdown did not come up with anything that was adequate in my mind, but if you think about a $17 trillion national debt, which is 100% of the GDP, think what's going to happen when all of that breaks loose. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to shred the credit card. We have to have tough decisions. It's always the same in Washington. Let's come together right now, increase taxes, and the cuts will come down the road, but the cuts never happen. We've got to use these opportunities as a trigger to come together and force some serious spending cuts, and that's what I have consistently stood for.
Tom, it wasn't about a government shutdown that we Republicans stood firm for. It was about a shutdown of Obamacare. It wasn't the Republican House that wanted to shut down the government. it was Harry Reid and President Obama that voted to shut down the government. We wanted to shut down Obamacare. Jack mentioned that maybe the 16 days didn't hurt the economy that bad, but I'll guarantee you there'll be a lot of amens out there when I say that Obamacare is hurting the government, it's hurting individuals, it's hurting patients, it's hurting all of us. So there's no question about that. We didn't vote to shut the government down. We voted to shut Obamacare down, and that means we get jobs back. Now finally, the question, Tom, about would we do the same thing in regard to the debt ceiling. Look, that's going to come up in February. Maybe it'll be April with extended things that the Department of Treasury can do. But when it comes up, I will only vote for it if there's a dollar for dollar cut in the increase in the debt ceiling, and we submit a balanced budget amendment to the state for ratification.
Tom, I agree with Dr. Gingrich on this, what he just said. In fact, nobody in the Republican Party in the House wanted to shut the government down. In fact, we voted to keep the government open. We must shut down Obamacare. We must replace it. I've got the bill to do so. It's the Patient Option Act, H.R. 2900, which will put you in charge of your health care decisions. Already today, Obamacare is shutting down job creation. It's moving people from being full-time employees to being part-time employees. It's stopping the growth of businesses. It's stopping people from hiring new folks. Obamacare is going to destroy our economy even further if we leave it in place. It was Harry Reid and Barack Obama that shut the government down. We actually passed a bill to continue funding the government at the level that it was being funded. All we did was said we were going to delay the implementation, we were going to defund it because it's a disaster. And it must be ripped out by the roots, and my Patient Option Act will do that.
Tim. Question directly for Congressman Kingston. If I'm counting correctly, of the 7 military bases in Georgia, the majority of those in your first congressional district, another round of BRAC, alignment closure, being discussed. A simple and direct question. As a U.S. Senator, would you have the muscle, the clout, to protect Georgia's military installations?
Absolutely. I've represented 5 out of our 8 military installations. I know what kind of economic impact. In Texas, it's $21 billion for the state. And then if you add the impact of having so many veterans, it's up to $29 billion. I just had breakfast last week with the chairman of GMA, the Georgia Military Affairs Committee, and discussed the possibility of another round of BRAC. And it could happen. We have got to make the case for why the Air Force can't kill the A-10 program. We've got to make the case why Warner Robins Logistics Center can fix any airplane at any time. We've got to make the case, as we did for the Albany Marine Logistics Center, that there's a lot of work out there that they can do because we know what they did for the up-armored Humvee in Iraq. I am a member of the Defense Committee. I can hit the ground running in the United States Senate. Georgia has always had a tradition, going back to Carl Vinson, of a senator who's strong on national defense. I am that House member, and I will be that Senate member.
So if I can ask the panelists, we can get a few more questions in. So next up is Lori.
Karen, there's been a lot of talk about extending unemployment benefits. A lot of times we'll go to these unemployment offices and these people really depend on these checks day to day for electricity to get food on the table. Where do you stand on extending the unemployment benefits at this point?
Well, I think the bigger issue is how are we going to get the economy going again? You know, just continuing to extend doesn't really do anything to create new jobs. We are in the place in this country where we have got to get the economy going and start creating jobs. To do that, we have to come at it on parallel tracks. Deal with the spending at the federal level, roll back regulations, reduce taxes. We have the highest corporate tax rate of any industrialized nation in the world. We need to get people back to work. This isn't a question of continuing to expand, but doing what we need to do to reignite our economy, let small businesses start to grow again, bring in this capital that is seized up on the sidelines so that they can start investing again in innovation that is going to be real job creators going down the road.
So no on extending the unemployment benefit.
At this point, we need to, if we're going to send one more time, make sure that we fill it with cost, offsetting costs. But the real point is how long are we going to continue to continuation? The real point, folks, is how are we going to get the economy going again?
Tom, Congressman Kingston mentioned this a minute ago, so let me direct my question to Congressman Gingrich. The tax exemption from municipal bonds, a very important issue for people here today. There's some talk about eliminating that tax exemption and the deficit reduction. Would you support or oppose that, please?
Absolutely, I would oppose that. That would be one of the worst things that we could possibly do in regard to fundamental tax reform. We need fundamental tax reform. We need to lower the corporate rate at 35%. That's the highest in the industrialized world, maybe the entire world. We need to bring that down to at least 28, if not 25%. There are even some that say let's eliminate the corporate tax altogether. I am a strong advocate with John Linda, former Congressman John Linda, and now Rob Woodall, an original co-sponsor of their bill for the fair tax. Whether it's a fair tax, a penny tax, a simple tax, we need tax simplification without question. But to eliminate or to put tax on top of municipal bonds, I think would absolutely kill our cities. I represent 70 of you of the 550 or so cities in this great state of Georgia. I would never vote for that.
Tim. Back to Lori's question. We can do this with a simple show of hands. We heard Karen Handel's answer regarding extending unemployment benefits. Actually, just a show of hands. Yes or no? Yes, I would vote to extend unemployment benefits. No, I would not. That's unanimous no.
Mike, could we have a little bit of rebuttal on that?
We'll get a chance. You can mix it into your closing comments. I really want to try to get a lot of questions. So folks,
my point of personal privilege, though, as we all know, a lot of these questions don't always have the yes or no don't give the credit, don't give the merit to the question that probably some of us would like to give.
Okay, I'll try to pick those out. Or maybe we'll ask our panelists to stretch it out a little bit.
And I know my friend Tim is very tough when he's on the radio stuff.
As a questioner, I will take that under advisement.
We appreciate that.
Congressman Brown, I have kind of a different question to ask you because the state of Georgia right now is grappling with this issue of medical marijuana. And there will be a bill introduced later this week allowing medical marijuana, not recreational, but medical marijuana, to be brought into the state of Georgia to help children with severe seizure disorders. Now, if Georgia does pass this law, they will be violating federal law. How do we deal with this issue? The U.S. Justice Department has said it's not going after the 20 states. Is it time to relook at marijuana being classified as a substance of class 1?
Lori, the first night I was sworn into Congress in 2007, there was an amendment to the Justice Department appropriations that said that funds in that bill could not be utilized to prosecute doctors or patients in states where medical marijuana has been legalized. I voted for the amendment. In fact, as a medical doctor, I know there are very valid reasons to utilize that drug. In fact, it can be prescribed in an oral type of preparation. It's no more dangerous than, in fact, less dangerous than some drugs that doctors routinely prescribe today. But the states should be determining whether the states are going to legalize marijuana for physicians like me to utilize for my patients, not only for childhood uncontrollable seizures. Some patients that are on chemotherapy for cancer can eat and keep fluids down by utilizing that drug when their chemotherapy is hurting them. We should have that debate in the states, not in the federal government.
Tim. Former Secretary of State Karen Handel, as you make your way on the campaign trail, I think I've asked you this before, are you finding the voters are warming up to Obamacare?
Not at all.
Talk for a moment about how it would impact these city governments. We hear the state leaders complain about it, what it's going to do to the state budget. What will it mean to these people?
Well, I think it means a lot to all of the residents that each of you serve, and what we're seeing is more and more families watching as their premiums go up, or they're being told that their claims are going away. Well, we really have to have those for Republicans. If you remember, when Hillary Care was derailed, Republicans didn't act. We have to make sure that we have an alternative. Congressman Tom Price has a great bill. It's H.R. 2300. It has portability of plans. It has high-risk pools, more robust health savings accounts. It also has additional tort reform so that we can begin to truly address the rising cost of health care driven by defensive medicine. All of those things come together, and then also in Obamacare, we know the impact that it's having on rural hospitals, and how do we make sure that we ensure access in the rural parts of our state as well, not just for those in the more urban areas. So again, in replacing the bill, we need to repeal Obamacare, but we have to step up with our plan that is patient-centered and market-driven.
Tom, I'm going to do what my colleague Tim did here and ask for a show of hands on this. Last year, the Senate passed a comprehensive immigration reform bill. It has not come up for a vote in the House as of yet. I'd like to ask panelists to raise your hand if you think the Senate bill should come up for a vote in the House. Do you? Anybody support that? All right, raise your hand if you think the bill should not come up for a vote. Again, we're unanimous. Thank you.
Let me say this as somebody, I think it's good to vote on anything, but I would not support the Senate bill. But letting it come to the floor is part of the process, but it's not going to pass. I would vigorously oppose it. And I think it's very important for us to say that as somebody who is, has a very strong record on this, I'm not afraid to debate the issue. I do not support amnesty. I support stronger border control. And I do not support welfare benefits for illegal workers. And I believe that businesses that knowingly hire illegals should be punished. And I feel very strong that I'm not afraid to debate this issue with anybody at any time or any place. I do not want the bill to come to the floor, but I'm not afraid of it.
I'm going to give each of you a chance to answer this because I want to be fair about it. So we'll just start with Representative Brand.
Tom, I think all of us would not like, as we showed, would not like to see that bill come to the floor. I'm not in favor of any new laws that give amnesty. In fact, I've got the No Amnesty Act that says with any immigration reform, no amnesty should be given to anybody. We should be a nation ruled under law, where everybody is treated equally under law. There should not be any special class of anybody. We must secure the border. Until we secure the border, nothing else matters. And we've got to start enforcing the laws on the books. There's only one new law that I'd like to see put in place, and that's one that makes English the official language of America.
You know, there are 435,000 illegal immigrants in the state of Georgia. That's more than in the border state of Arizona. And what President Obama has done by executive fiat is passed the DREAM Act. And there have been less deportations of illegal immigrants from the state of Georgia since he did that. I would be very, very reluctant to see that Senate bill come to the House floor. I'm not afraid of anything except the fact that then the Senate would demand to go to conference even if we defeated that bill on the House floor, and then we would end up getting jammed on this issue and making the Republican Party look mean and inhumane to those people south of the border that we truly do love and share their values and honor their work ethic. But we have an unemployment rate in this state that's still higher than most states in the nation. And we let 1 million people come into this country legally every year. Maybe we ought to adjust that based on the unemployment rate.
We've known for decades that the illegal immigration issue is a big problem for not only our state but our country, and yet time and time again, while some say they're not afraid to debate the issue, they clearly have some challenges with resolving it. We need to secure the border, folks. We know that. We need to make sure our Border Patrol agents have the resources and the latitude they need to do their jobs. But the other piece of immigration reform in dealing with the illegal immigration population is dealing with the visa process. We have somewhere upwards of 45% of individuals who come into our country legally but then skip their visas. That is just as much of a problem, and we don't begin to address any of it unless we start to deal with that piece of it as well. Then the last piece is also dealing with the fact that so many illegals are receiving benefits unlawfully, whether it is IRS tax credit, whether it is benefits at the federal level. Again, Congress has known this has been a problem, and they have fundamentally failed to act. It's time to have people who will act and get the job done.
David.
Well, thank you. Let me set my voice to order. You know, obviously it's not a nickel's worth of difference up here on immigration. We can argue semantics all day long. We've got enough laws on the books right now. We need to secure the border. Yes, we need to take care of the visa problems that we have. But y'all get what's going on? The distractions of the debate in Washington are not even trying to address the crisis that if we don't solve that, we're going to lose the right to debate these other issues. This debt is a full-blown crisis. It's not just a stump speech. We're burning the time it takes to get something done. It's almost unmanageable right now when you look at the future unfunded liabilities that nobody wants to stand up and talk about. The problem right now is we're distracted off the priorities in Washington. If this were a business, I'm not sure that the people in this debate in this room might be included in the next one, because we'd be focusing on the problem at hand and how to solve the crisis at hand. If we don't fix that, we're going to lose the right to debate all the rest of this.
This issue I must stand up. Immigration. As an immigrant American, I always believe this illegal immigrant give amnesty? No, 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 no. Because that would direct insult to a person like me to come in the country legally. However, in the Washington, they keep trying to do this illegal immigrant issue is like a politics. Did they ever really go talking to the community and really find out what they really want? How can we prevent this continue coming the illegal immigrant? Or because we need to secure the border. But the real issue is we need to come up with a different kind of immigration law. Much easier to come in the country so we can stop them, let them to come in illegally. However, I know as I'm running out of my time, the folks in here keep pushing me off the I was sitting in red The panel don't even ask me, so I guess that's all I got to say. Thank you.
As I get ready to ask you for your closing comments, unfortunately that'll be our last question. I want to thank you each for coming today. You've done a great job. And I will start with Representative Brown for your closing comment.
There are many things that we're alike because we're Republicans. But the real difference between all these candidates and me is that I have that proven conservative constitutional voting record. There are 4 questions I ask about all legislation. The first is, isn't constitutional according to the original intent? Is it one of the 18 enumerated powers in Article 1, Section 8? Second, is it right? Does it fit the Judeo-Christian biblical principles that our nation is founded upon? 3, do we need it? 4, can we afford it? If all 4 yes, I vote yes. If one's no, I vote no. And I'll pledge to you I'll do that as a U.S. Senator. Now, you hear about, everybody says they support getting rid of Obamacare. I've got the plan. Everybody says we need to create jobs and a strong economy. I've got the bill. Everybody says we need to balance the budget. I've got the strongest balanced budget amendment to the Constitution that's out there.
Time's up.
I'm the true, proven conservative in this race. Please vote for Paul Brown for U.S. Senate. Thank you.
Representative Keyes.
Thank you very much. We've heard a lot today, but what we haven't heard from is the Democrat candidates. I'm appalled that the leading Democrat opponent has refused to come up in front of you and answer tough questions. One thing I think the 7 or 8 of us are all united on is that you need to stand in front of people and let them have the opportunity that we've done today. I applaud you for this. I hope that you will invite the Democrats back and ask them these tough questions. As I said earlier, the American dream is under attack. A large government that is intruding in our life, interfering with your city council and your city and your right to run your community, it's killing the American dream. I've worked with you on your road issues, on your military issues, on crime issues, on prison issues, on EPA and environmental issues. I will be an advocate for Georgia's city, and I will continue to fight for a smaller, leaner government. It's very important that we have somebody who knows these issues and knows you representing Georgia in the United States Senate. Thank you.
Mr. Yu.
I'm the boss.
I didn't go out of turn. I think I drew number 3. I'm not worried about the Democrat not being here. But this time, enough of that. As Brenda Lee said in the song, one step at a time, boy, one step at a time. I like my opponents. I truly do. We've got a primary on May the 20th, and without question, we will have a runoff on July the 22nd. And you've got to make a decision on which of us is the Republican nominee, because that person is going to be the next United States Senator. Mark my words. And that is hugely important, because to take over the Senate and get rid of Harry Reid, we need a plus of 6. If we lost Georgia, we would need a plus of 7. Immensely more difficult. So you need to pick the right person that can represent you, that is the most conservative candidate that can be elected in November. I am that candidate, and I've got that experience from practicing medicine and listening to people and making the right decision. You vote for Phil Gingrich on May the 20th, and then again on July the 22nd, and finally in November. And I promise you, in my first term in office, I will eliminate Obamacare along with the Republican Senate, 2016, a Republican president, or I'll come home. God bless you, and thank you for giving me this opportunity.
I'm scared to even say who's next because I have the order wrong, but I think it's Purdue. I think it's David Purdue. You're 5th, so I have no idea. Whoever, you all know, obviously.
Okay. Thank you. Look, the decision in this race is very simple. I've said before, anybody up here is going to be better than a liberal Democrat in this city. We have to protect that. But the decision is really very simple. If you like what's going on in Washington, you like this rhetoric, we have 4 career politicians to pick from. They've been there 63 years and run for office 39 times. But if you think the crisis of the day, like the rest of Georgia, where 60% of us think that the debt and the economy is the #1 issue today, then isn't it time to put somebody in the U.S. Senate where only 10 people have any business background that understands the free enterprise system? I'm the only candidate in this race that's run a multinational, complex organization of any size. I'm the only person in this race that, when elected to the United States Senate, will have more business experience than anybody else in the Senate. Reagan asked a question the night of his election: are you better off than you were 4 years ago? My question to you right now today, and I'm going around the state asking this question: are your kids and grandkids going to be better off than you are? And the answer today is unconscionably no. Now, whose fault is that? It's the people who've been in charge. The next senator from Georgia needs to be more concerned about the next generation than the next election. Thank you.
Thank you again for giving us the opportunity to be here this morning. As I started out, I'm going to say again, results matter. And you've heard a lot tonight about how people voted no this morning, rather, about how people voted no, the plans they have, the things they're going to do. With all due respect, they've had 10, 20 years to do everything that they've talked about up here, and they haven't. Why should we trust that they'll be any different by going from the House over to the Senate? We need new leadership in the United States Senate, new leadership in Washington, D.C., an individual like myself who has a proven record of getting things done in elected office, a proven record of getting things done in the private sector. I'm the only candidate in this race who's walked in the shoes of a local elected official. You will have a friend and a colleague, someone that you already know that you can work with. We know we have a lot to do. The American dream is at risk. It is at risk. And we need someone who's going to go to Washington, who's going to act and be bold about the things we need to do, who will do it with you in partnership, so that we protect the American dream and ensure that America always remains the greatest land of opportunity and the greatest land of freedom. Thank y'all. God bless you.
I'm glad I knew I was the last. Well, this morning was very important because you have to see all this candidate who's going to be next U.S. Senator from Georgia. However, do you want United States Senator who represent the state of Georgia, one of just 100, or do you want one of a kind who will truly stand up for you? I am one of a kind which will fight for you. However, in the baseball game, if your pitcher gets beat up by the other team, guess what you do? You need to change, right? You cannot keep setting the same people over and over, expecting to win the game. That's common sense. I am that person to win the game for you. I am the only one person qualified that bring the job from overseas to the state of Georgia. Just like Mr. Dave Perdue mentioned that he's the only businessman. Well, I'm the businessman too. Matter of fact, I was dealing with more than 20 different foreign countries, the military and the national leaders. And then I will bring that experiences to the state of Georgia, folks, so we can bring the business back to the state of Georgia, so we all can be prosperous for the the generation to come. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
So I owe you all an apology. I actually had the list written correctly and didn't look on the right page. Something I hope you master at the Senate. I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us and for your willingness to serve the citizens of Georgia. Folks, let's give them a round of applause. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Rad, as he likes to be called, to the audience. Born in the former Yugoslavia, Branko Rad came to the United States at the age of 7. He completed his psychiatry residency at Yale and then began practicing medicine in Atlanta. Called to do more to serve his fellow Georgians, Dr. Rad advocated for reform when Georgia's failing mental health system was exposed. This effort led him to found FaithWorks, a nonprofit organization which galvanizes people of faith to help those with mental illness in local communities and congregations. Please welcome Dr. Rad.
Good morning. I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak with you this morning, and I'm honored to be here, and it's a privilege to represent the Democratic Party of Georgia at this event. You know, having listened to this debate just a moment ago, I'm all fired up. I don't know why we're going to wait for another 6 months. I can do it right now. I don't need any other Democratic candidates. I'll take all 6 of them, all 7 of them, right now. Well, my name is Branko Radulacki. It's Dr. Branko Radulacki. And with a last name like mine, you might think that I'm from a South Georgia family. Well, certainly that's not the case. I was born in the former Yugoslavia in Belgrade, moved to the United States at the age of 7. I've been happily married for over 20 years and have 2 teenage children. A daughter, Katie, who's a junior in high school and just took her SAT last weekend, and a son, Ryan, who's 15 years old and he's a freshman. So they keep us plenty busy, notwithstanding the current campaign. Now, as a psychiatrist, a medical doctor as a psychiatrist, when I come to public settings similar to this, a lot of times people take a step back and they sort of, they wonder, gosh, he's a psychiatrist. I wonder if he's analyzing me. And I just want to assure you, I'm not here to analyze anyone. I can barely see you with all these lights. But I am called to go and to analyze and address the dysfunction that's been plaguing our country up in Washington. And I've started my public service, as Mike mentioned, doing mental health advocacy around reforms to our state psychiatric hospital systems here. At that time, several years ago, there was a crisis and over 100 people were documented to have died under suspicious circumstances in those hospitals. Now, I helped galvanize a group of mental health advocates after our state government did not respond positively to that crisis. I helped galvanize mental health advocates, including the Carter Center, to address that problem. And our efforts resulted in the United States Justice Department getting involved and suing the state of Georgia regarding those reforms. 2 years later, the state of Georgia agreed to a settlement with the United States Justice Department for $50 million. And that was a wonderful outcome. And it taught me two things, at least two things. One is that one person can make a difference in standing up for the vulnerable and those in need, and helping fix an institution, a process that was so broken people had given up on it. That's number one. Number two is that there is a role for good and effective government, even federal government. Yes, local, state, and federal government. But we need the right people to galvanize and channel the resources of that government in the right areas. Now, when that $50 million, that settlement came through, where did those resources go? They went to communities like yours to help address community resources, provide the kind of treatment and care that those individuals needed, that the most vulnerable in our society needed. Now, even before going into medicine, I worked on Wall Street as an investment banker, and then earned my MBA from the University of Chicago. So I really believe that my background in finance and in healthcare and running a small business as a solo practitioner, as well as my mental health advocacy work, has really equipped me to be a strong and effective voice for all of Georgia up in D.C. and to help end the gridlock that's been plaguing our nation for the past few years. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the issues and policies of my platform that will resonate with some of you, and also talk about the opportunities and the way I plan to advocate for you up at the Capitol as well. As a medical practitioner, I do believe in healthcare reform. I believe in providing affordable and accessible healthcare to as many Georgians and as many of our fellow Americans as possible. I do support the legislation, the Affordable Care Act. Not that it's perfect, not that it doesn't need changing, which it does, and we should make those changes. But we should stop wasting our energy and looking back. Instead, we should focus on moving forward and making those fixes. And I also believe in Medicaid expansion. I believe in economic argument and moral argument for that. And I believe that's one of the biggest issues facing Georgia in 2014 that we need to address, and we do need to expand Medicaid. I also believe in immigration reform. I believe that as a first-generation immigrant, I've benefited from the opportunities that this great country has to offer. And I know that there are others around the world who still look at America as a land of opportunity. And it is. And we need to maintain that. And we need to create opportunities for those individuals who are willing to come here, willing to work hard, pay taxes, and I believe we would benefit from their industriousness. The President of the United States Chamber of Commerce recently said that immigration reform is a top issue for his group. And I agree. Now, we heard just a moment ago some of the other candidates talk about immigration reform and amnesty. Well, you know what? The Senate passed a bipartisan bill. So I believe that amnesty is one of those things. It is a red herring because the Senate passed a bipartisan bill. Why can't the House do that? I'll tell you why. Because there's dysfunction up in Washington. That is the issue, and that we need to address. The other issue I want to talk about is education reform. Whenever the pathway that I've chosen and the pathway that's led to the success that I've experienced, it's been through education. When I've made mistakes in my career, made bad choices, I've turned to education as to what to get me out of it. So I believe that education is the social ladder of mobility in our country. And we need to make that as affordable and accessible as we can as well. Now, with respect to some of the issues that your group, that the GMA is facing, I want to let you know that I'm going to be a strong supporter of many of those issues. For instance, I do believe that state and local government should be able to levy taxes on remote sales. I believe that is one of the roles of the federal government, is to create opportunity and also level the playing field. And I believe also, and I would be supportive of continuing the tax exemption for municipal bonds. I understand how difficult it is to raise capital and how important that funding source is for communities like yours. And we need to have that continue, because that is going to be part of the engine of growth for your communities and job creation. And who knows better how to deploy those resources than you all. I also believe in transportation policy and telecommunications policy that would channel investment in the infrastructure that you all need to be competitive, not only in your local communities, but at the state level, in our country, and globally. And I also believe that telecommunication policy needs to have more local and regulatory control, letting you decide what's best for your communities. So how do we accomplish this? How do we accomplish all your legislative goals and objectives? Well, you're going to need an advocate who has both vision, the skills, and the courage to advocate effectively for you up in Washington. Because you're going to need someone who's going to be able to break through to that dysfunction that's been going on. Now, I've done that as an advocate for my practice, for my patients and their families. I've also done that for those who are most vulnerable in our society under the state's care in the state psychiatric hospital system, and I will do it for you and your communities. Now, as I've been saying on the campaign trail, people have been telling me, Georgia does need a new senator, but Washington really needs a psychiatrist. So on that count, I'm ready. I'm ready to be your next Georgia senator. I ask for your support, I ask for your vote in May and again in the general election. Thank you for this time.
Thanks everyone for being here. I hope you found this helpful, and I appreciate GMA arranging this. Let's all have a great day.